Permjot is an entrepreneur. He's an investor. He's been a startup coach for us for many, many years. And as Sarah Goforth, who can't be with us today, but she pointed out yesterday that he is the Goodwill ambassador for our state of Arkansas. So he holds a special place in our heart. He's also our mentor and residence at OEI, the Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And he's usually in person, which is fun. And this is the second best thing. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Permjot. He's going to be talking to us today about storytelling.
Thank you very much indeed, Stacey. Thank you very much. And a big warm welcome to Professor Reeves, who is the reason I got started in Arkansas as well. So always great to see Professor Reeves, and great to see Deb Williams joining as well. Deb Williams is always the reason I do well in these presentations. I'm always on my very best behavior when Deb is on the call. So Deb, great to see you as well, and I hope all is good. As yesterday, please do feel free to interrupt, make comments, make suggestions. Now, what's going to happen is, please do use the text function as well. So if you do have a pressing question, but you don't want to interrupt, that's okay. Just put it in the text function, and then Stacey, at a suitable moment, will interrupt me and say, hey, we've got a great question, because I love it. I want to be as interactive as possible, and I want you to get out of this session what you can. So this is a really, really fresh presentation. I've only delivered it once so far, but I really like doing it, A, because it's fresh, but secondly, because it's something that I really love. Pixar. Who doesn't like Pixar? And it was really interesting because I read this book. Where's the book? Ah, here it is. It is this book, Pixar Storytelling. And I just read this book because I just went crazy about the whole Pixar thing. I was reading Creativity Inc. and everything, and I've just realized the way Pixar creates and crafts stories is so similar to the way great entrepreneurs do their pitches, because it's actually a story and they just get us into their story. So I hope you enjoy this presentation. It's all about the art of storytelling, and it's building on what we learned yesterday in language. So we've got a language, and one of the things I didn't mention yesterday, one of the greatest storytellers, and very, very linked to language, of course, Dr. Seuss. Now, what was really interesting, I didn't realize this, was Dr. Seuss was actually commissioned by the US government to improve literacy and improve people's interest in learning. And one of the genius things that Dr. Seuss did was he only used a certain amount of words, because the idea was that you wanted kids to not be, I don't know what this means, I don't know what this means. He wanted people to get passionate about reading. So he uses that whole thing about, you know, you should only use words that a 6-year-old understand, or explain it in a way a 6-year-old understand. Dr. Seuss is the living embodiment. Well, he's not with us anymore, sadly, but that is the embodiment of what it was about. So on to share screen, and we're going to go Pixar. Hope all of you can see this. So on my screen, just so you know, I have Brandon, who's always very polite because he's from England, and we've got Brooke as well, and we've got Stacey. So I will be picking on you for questions, and I need your reactions to let me know if it's going well or if it's going badly, or if you look puzzled, that it is also a good look as well. That's I need clarification, or it's all going well. So storytelling. See, these are some of the few characters from the Pixar universe. So before we begin, let me show you a very short video.
Hey, Pete.
Oh, hey, Val.
How's it going?
You know what? I'm having a really bad day.
What happened?
See, what Val's saying when she says, what happened, is tell me a story. And that's actually what this season of Pixar in a Box is all about. To make a movie here at Pixar takes years, but it all starts with a story. Humans have been telling stories since we could speak, probably even before. We tell stories around the campfire. We write plays. We write novels, short stories. We make movies. We take photographs, tweet to each other. The list goes on. The power of story is that it has an ability to connect with people on an emotional level. One of the things you hear all the time, this advice, is write what you know. Now, as a kid, I was like, I don't want to write about suburban Minnesota. That's boring. I want to write about explosions and monsters and car chases. Well, what that actually means is, yeah, go ahead and write about monsters and explosions and car chases, but put something into it that talks about your own life, how you feel. Do you feel scared? Do you feel alone? something from your own life will make that story come alive and not just be a boring car chase. When I started directing Monsters Incorporated, the way I would pitch it is, it's about a monster who scares kids for a living. That's his job. He clocks in, he clocks out, he eats donuts and talks about union dues. And we thought that was a pretty funny idea. And sure enough, when I would tell it to people, they would smile. But when we told the story as a film, people started getting bored and restless. And they're like, I don't understand what this movie is about. Well, what I finally figured out was that it's actually not about a monster who scares kids. It's about a man becoming a father. And that was what was happening to me. So why write about what you know? Well, it's because probably what happened to you made you feel some particular way. And what you're trying to do really when you tell a story is to get the audience to have that same feeling. One of the big revelations for me telling stories is how much work they are, really. I always thought you would just tell the story once and it would be perfect. And geniuses like Walt Disney or Miyazaki, this brilliance comes out of their head once and there it is. Well, the truth is, our stories don't always come out exactly perfectly the first time, or the second time, or the third time, or the fourth, up to the 30th time. And so you keep going again and again and again. And only after retelling the story many, many times does it really sparkle. This season of Pixar in a Box is about how we at Pixar tell our stories, in hopes that it will inspire you to tell yours.
Seriously, what happened?
So the first thing, I get to my desk, right?
So I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you saw some relevant points there. So what we're going to do today, this evening, is we're going to talk about what is storytelling. We're going to explore why do we actually tell stories, and then what makes a good story, and then talk through the storytelling process and link this to entrepreneurship. So this isn't just an isolated talk about storytelling, but I want to link it to what you're doing, whether it be a PhD, a dissertation that you're doing, or indeed, if you're instructing a class about something, telling a story just makes something that much powerful. Now, some of you have probably done that memory trick, you know, where you do the memory trick, where how do you remember numbers that aren't connected, etc. And one of the ways to do that is by constructing in your mind a story. So the great people who have these amazing memories, they link the numbers to a story, and or whichever thing they have to remember. So if I gave you 20 items to think of randomly, if you created a story around those 20 random items, you would remember every single one of those items. So stories are a very powerful way of us helping to recall information as well. Storytelling is the interactive art, and I love the word interactive. It should engage people, of using words and actions, because a storytelling doesn't just have to be using words. You can also use actions. You can do things. You can make loud noises all of a sudden. Some of the ways kids are told stories, we become very animated and we do special voices, and it's beautiful just listening to that and seeing how engaged the children get with that. So it's using words and actions to reveal the elements and images of the story while encouraging the listener's imagination. And I think the great thing about that is what you're really trying to do is fire up people's imagination. You could be a startup presenting a new idea. You could be doing a dissertation. And the idea should be, because the very meaning of a dissertation, if you're doing a PhD, is you are expanding the universe of knowledge. That's literally what you're doing. You're expanding the universe of knowledge. So you have to fire up the listener's imagination through using interactive arts and words and actions. So I think once you start thinking about defending a thesis, or presenting, or giving an instruction to class, or even presenting accounting, I found that when I was taught a little bit of accounting, when somebody told me the story of how accounting came into existence, which was to do with farms in Italy, and there's a different story there, I was like, wow. And it's fascinating when you hear about the story about why all the coffees, there's great stories with every coffee, like why Americano is called Americano. But what happened was, after World War II, there were loads of American soldiers in Italy, and they just couldn't, they found the espresso too strong. So they said, oh, could you put water in it? And it says, Americano. So it was an insult because Americans couldn't handle Italian coffee. Now that story to me is just fascinating. And there are loads of other stories. And I've always found the stories of words fascinating. People love stories. The best stories get the the listener's imagination fired up. And that's your job as an entrepreneur, or as anyone pitching, anyone trying to persuade someone. It's your job to fire up the listener's imagination. Now, why is it relevant? Because we do need to connect, and you need stories to connect. You're not going to be able to attract employees to join your organization. You're not going to get advisors to want to advise you, or mentors or investors, unless you can connect with those people. And you have to tell them a story to get them connected to you. The story that actually brought me to Arkansas to start with was growing up in London, etc. There was something about the Bill Clinton in 1992 that was like, whoa. And I always wanted to visit Arkansas because of Bill Clinton. It's so strange. And then I met Dr. Reeves in a place called Winnipeg in Canada. Winnipeg is famous for, that's Winnie the Pooh is named after Winnipeg. It was a bear in the zoo there. So Winnie the Pooh is named after Winnipeg. And when I met Dr. Reeves, Professor Reeves and her team in Arkansas, in Winnipeg, because of the Arkansas story, I was just naturally attracted to them. And then the rest is history. I met one of the Nim Chow, and he invited me to Arkansas to meet Dr. Reeves, etc., etc., etc. So there's always a good story behind why most things happen. So you need these stories to help you connect. So think about who you need to connect with and what is the story that you try to tell. Often people give demos, and the demos are really bad, because demos are like, you know, that story. And then they walked across, and then it started raining, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it's really, really dull. Whereas if you do a demo which tells a story, because Steve Jobs did demos, but his demos were never boring, because he told stories, he weaved stories in. He put you in a situation which fired your imagination about what the technology could do. If there are any questions, do please ask in the text box. If I'm going too fast, too slow, you want me to emphasize certain points, or to if you want me to do a summary of what we've covered so far, more than happy to do that as well. So why do we tell stories? Fundamentally, we tell stories to make us care. I really like the way Pete Doherty said, it's to make us feel. A great movie, a great book, a great cartoon, a great experience makes you feel something. I remember watching Good Will Hunting and just feeling so many things. And there are so many movies I see, there are so many great things that make us care. The best compliment somebody could pay you is, you did something that made me care. I mean, that is awesome. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to tell stories to help you get people to care about whatever it is you're doing. It could be a project you're doing. It could be any weird thing you're doing, but link it to why. What is the story behind it? It suddenly becomes very interesting and relevant. What makes a good story? So let's break this down. You've got to think through, what do you want the audience to know and when? Too many people start off with a pitch which says, my name is Permjot and we solve the problem of da 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 da. And straight away they tell me what you do, and I'm like, there was no anticipation, there was no build-up. So think through the structure of a story. What do you want the audience to know, and when do you want them to know it? Think about the great suspense. It's almost like telling a joke. You wouldn't tell a joke with the punchline at the beginning, because you know the structure has to follow. A story is also a promise that something will be worth your time. There's this, and good stories, jokes always follow the structure of a really, really good story. But you can reverse some of these things to create the joke. You've probably heard that. It's a terrible, terrible joke. And I'll tell you the joke very quickly. I'll give you the 30-second version of this joke. There's this moth that goes into a, the moth is floating around, and it goes to see a pediatrician. And it sits down in front of the pediatrician, and it starts telling the pediatrician, hey, how you doing? And he says, I'm not too well. Anyway, the moth then tells a very, very, very long story about the kids. And this goes on for about 10, 12 minutes. And you're like, where's this story going? Where's this story going? And then at the end of it, the pediatrician says, I think you're in the wrong room. You should be at the psychologist. What made you come here? And the moth says, your light was on. And the whole joke is, and then it's kind of like, you go, but you go, because the joke works because the punchline could have been given at the very beginning, which is a moth sees the light and goes in, you know, that's it. But it's kind of like reversing the promise that it'll be worth your time, because clearly it's not. So think through that. Think about how you create a good structure to a story and the promise that it will be worth your time. The audiences will want to do some work. They will. Audiences will want to do some work. Some of the greatest movies do require some level of work, but they don't want to feel like they've done the work. And you've got to give them a journey. You've got to help them flow through. A lot of stories don't work because it jars. It's like when you go in a car and the car is going very smoothly. That's what a good story should feel like. Yeah, anticipated, smooth. I'm working, but I don't feel like I'm working. And what you have to do is construct anticipation. So many pitches fail and are dull because there is zero anticipation. You have to build the anticipation. We talked yesterday, didn't we, about using pauses and not feeling the need to rush and to speak very fast and say everything. That's okay to just take your time, construct anticipation. As long as you don't do it too much and too deliberately, then it gets a bit, what's your point? What's your point? And do not forget to invoke wonder. And everything can be wonderful if people see that in you. What is the storytelling process? Well, there is always a structure to stories. Now, I know it sounds obvious, but so many people don't actually think about the story as there's a start, there's a middle and an end. Most of the pitches I have seen begin at the end, and it's awful because there's no anticipation. I'm a startup looking to do this. I'm a startup that my product does this, this, and this. We are a this, and we are looking to do this. So they've kind of already, and then I've already lost interest because I've decided that isn't for me. But if they actually started with a story and got me involved and gradually got me engaged, by the end of it, I'll be like, oh, I love this. So think about the story. Think about, and I talked yesterday about The Usual Suspects. Think about great movies. They know how you want to end. I remember saying Steven Spielberg's movies and the other great producer of movies he did, Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick never knew how to begin a movie, and Steven Spielberg doesn't know how to end a movie. So if you watch any Steven Spielberg movie, there's about 3 or 4 endings. You think, oh, it's ended now. Oh, no, there's more. Oh, it's ended now. No, there's another. So Steven Spielberg movies don't know when to end, and Stanley Kubrick movies don't know when to begin. And there was that movie, the last movie that I think Stanley Kubrick did, which Eyes Wide Shut. And it was just terrible because Stanley Kubrick did the first bit of the movie, and then I think Steven Spielberg finished the movie. So you got somebody who couldn't begin a movie doing the beginning, and somebody who couldn't end a movie doing the ending, and it shows in the terrible movie. So think about, how do you know how you want to end? It's very, very important, because knowing how you want to end will create the tension. But what you also need to do then is resolve the tension. You need to build up the issue. So if you're talking about a dissertation, if you're talking about a pitch, if you're talking about talking to investors, what is the tension? The tension comes from the problem you're solving. Give me something about that. Give me some anticipation, invoke wonder, and then resolve the tension by saying, but we do have a solution for this problem. Or my dissertation has led me to these conclusions, and these are the basis of these conclusions. And most importantly, conclude with the listener knowing exactly what the journey was, what their job is. So we're going to give some specific examples around Pixar for this. Great movie. This is a character called Antoine Ego in that great movie called Ratatouille, which I just love. And in it, there's a line which says, not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere. And the whole idea behind Pixar and their stories is you've got to choose an idea, and you've got to take us outside of our comfort zone, but you've got to provide some stability. So the basic premise of Ratatouille is, I hope you've all seen these Pixar movies and I'm not ruining them for you. That'd be terrible, because I was going to watch all these movies, but not going to see them now because I've given away the story. But the basic premise of Ratatouille is there is this very special rat who is endowed with gifts where he can actually cook, and he has great scent, and he can smell good food, and he just knows how to cook, and he's a great chef. And anyway, by the way, does anybody know what the difference between a chef and a cook is? Bit of trivia. So a chef is a cook with people. Chef is literally the French word from chief. So a chef is somebody who runs a kitchen with other people. So if you work on your own, you're a cook. If you work with other people, you're a chef. There you go. Bit of trivia. Choose an idea. So when you're doing your startup idea, when you're talking about your dissertation, or when you're doing a lecture, or when you're creating a story, choose the idea, take people, stretch people's comfort around that idea, but don't stray too far. Have some stability. Ratatouille never, ever strays from the idea that there's a rat that can cook. And they don't just keep adding on. How many times I was watching this Lucifer? I was watching Lucifer, and I was watching other TV shows with my partner. And one of the interesting things was we'd be watching a movie with a really stupid premise. So the movie would be a very stupid premise, but then something else happens which is really stupid, and then you say, now it's not believable. It's just not believable now. And it's very, very strange how we do that all the time, where we don't mind one crazy, stupid idea in a movie, but when there's 2 or 3 stupid ideas and it's suddenly you just don't believe it anymore because it strayed away from the core idea. Movies do that all the time. They, jumping the shark moments. Don't stray too far from the core idea. Stay true to the idea. And think about the drama. The tension in the drama has to come from that core idea. So what is it? So your core idea could be a problem you're solving. All entrepreneurs, the difference between business people and entrepreneurs, business people look at things they can make money from, nothing wrong with that. Entrepreneurs look at great problems they can solve. They may make money out of solving those problems, they may not. But the first obsession is, how do I solve that problem? That's where the tension and the drama in your pitch, in your investment story comes from, that there is this problem. And we think and hope, and with your investment, we'll find out if we can solve this problem. That's where the tension and the drama comes from. Movie I watched recently, Brave. We can't just run away from who we are. And I really like when Pete Doherty talked about, Monsters Inc. It really got to me. I don't know why. I got very emotional when he said that actually the core idea behind Monsters Inc. is the relationship between this monster and this beautiful girl, and how he becomes a father to her. And you see his eyes just filling up with tears and stuff when he just gets close, and he's never ever had the experience of bonding with a kid before. And then I love Monsters Inc. and I love the way the story twists, that they realize they can actually create a lot more energy by making kids laugh than by scaring kids. What a beautiful, beautiful idea. So it never strays too far away from the core idea, which is monsters have to create energy, which is the whole city is fueled by kids' screams. But what they find is actually, by staying true to the core idea, they can actually generate so much more energy by making kids laugh. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful movie. Interesting enough, it was only the only time, because it was in collaboration with Disney, it's the only time they did a prequel. Monsters Inc. is the only time there was a prequel to a big animation thing. So, because Monsters University. So one of the things you've got to do is you just can't run away from who you are. Strong caring comes from strong opinions, but the best opinions come from personal experiences. And again, Pete Doherty talked about what Monsters Inc., what made that movie, what elevated it was, he had just become a father, and he was injecting that personal experience, the personal wonder of becoming a parent into a film about monsters. What a beautiful thing. I really do not like pitches where somebody has just studied different business models and there is nothing about them injected into the business thing they're doing. I have to see, as an investor, I have to see a bit of you in that. I don't want you to run away from who you are. And I think you've got to really stay true to that. You don't run away from who you are. So many of us want to do that, and I don't know why we want to do that. Be who you are and make that part of the story. And there are 3 levels of liking. There's the is there a comment there?
Yes, from Andrew Blake. He said, "Why do you think that is important?"
What is important? Sorry, the injecting yourself in it.
I believe that's
yes.
Andrew, because Andrew, being an entrepreneur is really, really tough. It's really hard. It's the hardest thing you could choose. Most of you, by definition, are extraordinarily bright, very ambitious, and extraordinarily hardworking. None of you will struggle to get a job. Okay, so your decision to give up that to pursue entrepreneurship is crazy at one level. So what I need to know is that when you hit these obstacles, will you persevere with them? Because if your motivation is money, you will at the first sign of trouble think, really good idea. I'm really glad I did this. I've learned lots. It was a really good experience, but I'm now going to try this other thing because, you know, I can't say no to that kind of income. Whereas if there's something about you in it, if there's a bit of you, no, I have to solve this problem. It's more than the money thing. I have to solve this problem. That's why that's important, because the strong caring comes from the best, from personal experiences. You know, if I said, I want to solve this problem because of this, if I said, I want to solve this problem because what happened was somebody I cared about deeply was affected by the problem. This was how it manifested itself. And it just got me on this mission and I was resolved to solve this. As an investor, you feel that person's going to stay with it. Whereas if, in a weird way, by backing talent, and all of you on this call, by definition, are talent, we've got to know, but the problem with talent is you're going to get attracted to loads of different things. And I need to know that you're in there. Does that answer your question, Andrew?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing research on this type of stuff, so this is really interesting. Thank you for your perspective.
Yeah, we need a commitment to overcome certain, and Pixar talks about this in other movies as well. So I will come on to that as well. Now, one of the interesting things about when we like someone, when we just meet somebody very briefly, quickly, we like them, it's skin deep. Oh, there's a bit of energy there. There's a bit of enthusiasm. I like them. Then we go from that to knowledge. We get to know someone. And as we gain more knowledge, we then either like them more or like them slightly less as we acquire knowledge. So that's the next level of liking. Empathy, though, is when you actually understand someone. And there's that great, one of the best lines ever in a movie, Good Will Hunting, when Robin Williams is talking about his deceased wife. And he talks about, you know, you don't love someone despite their faults. You love someone because of their faults. Those little quirky stuff that people do that everybody else finds, doesn't it drive you crazy? No, it makes me love them more every single time. And it's just one of these weird things. Any of us who have a pet knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's the pet's quirks and the annoying things pets do that make us love them, not the, oh, aren't they cute when they just sit on the mantle and don't interact with anybody and they just look cute? No, that's not why you love a pet. It's all the annoying things that they do. And they say, did I just equate pets to relationships? I'm sorry. You can see I'm carried away with my pet at the moment. I've been away from home for 3 days. So clearly I've missed him a great deal. So think about that we want to, when you're presenting, when you're talking about entrepreneurship, when you're talking about your dissertation, when you're talking about that, we want to know what your flaws are. And we want to see how those flaws are actually part of the character, part of the, you know, part of the story. It's part of the who you are. It's going to be what you do, because nobody can be you as well as you. Don't try to be someone else, because that job's already done. Somebody else is doing that job. Be you. Being you is the most critical determinant of being likable. You know, a lot of people, the number one reason why people don't like people is because they say they're fake or they're this, that. If you're just you, likability is a critical determinant of success. I cannot stress it how, you know, when people say, why did you invest in that person? What we do is we find BS reasons to say, I invested because of this, I invested because of that. Ultimately, the number one reasons, if people are being totally honest, why they invest in someone is because I liked them. And then we use intelligence to justify the decision we've already made. It's when you're doing job interviews, most people tell you, I actually decided within a couple of minutes that was the person I wanted to hire. Why? There was something about the way they sat down. There was something about them. I just liked them. But then you have to ask these questions. You have to give these scorings. You have to do these things that say, oh yeah, there was some intelligence that went into this. And again, that great book, 9 Myths About Work, talks about this in the interviewing process, how flawed interviewing is. And just when all hope is lost, Syndrome will leave the day. This is from that great, The Incredibles. Great. So Syndrome is the bad character there, who looks like someone else I can think of. And what happens in great stories and great pitches is you create tension. It matters a great deal. The tension matters a great deal. But then what you see in great movies is through that tension comes the change. And comes a resolution to become better. In resolving this tension, we become better versions of ourselves. The number one mistake most people make when they're pitching to investors is they think that investors want to make more money. By definition, if they're an investor, they probably are doing okay. They're probably doing okay. What they really want to do is can by investing in you, can I actually become a better version of myself? Is what you're doing going to help us become a better version of what you're doing? Lots of people are always looking for these challenges, but how do we become better people? There was this great book I read about development of character and how by a lot of great people are very flawed, and often the way they overcome those flaws is what makes them great. One of the best movies I was ever affected by was actually Schindler's List, because Oskar Schindler himself was an extraordinarily flawed individual. And one of the things that the film didn't cover was that when World War II actually started, the pretext that the Nazis needed to start the war was they got some, they actually got some Polish soldiers to attack a German radio station. That was a pretext for them to invade Poland. So what they did was actually got some prisoners who were sentenced to death, and they got those prisoners dressed up in Polish war uniforms. Schindler supplied those uniforms, which is an interesting quirk of history. But Oskar Schindler, when it came to it, and you saw it in the movie, when it actually came to the big tension, he was like, I just can't do this. He became a better version of himself through that tension. Mahatma Gandhi, same thing. It was being thrown off a train because he'd come from an incredibly privileged background. He had never experienced racism or anything. And suddenly he went to South Africa, and although because he was very wealthy, he had this first class ticket, being thrown out the train for the first time in his life, he realized, oh my gosh, I'm not. All of us have these moments in our life. All of us, every single human being has had a moment in their life where there is some tension and they have to resolve. What do I do at this moment? And some of us, sadly, many of us, and I've done this often, make the wrong decision, and then you try to catch up and become a better version of yourself. You're seeking that redemption. And a lot of investors are often looking for, how can I make a better version of myself? Now, one of the things I love doing is I love helping young talent. I love helping young talent with advice, etc. Because either I ignored other people I should have helped early in my career, or I feel angry that I didn't get that help. So how you decide to resolve that tension is your gift. And entrepreneurship should be about that as well. So this is quite a philosophical conversation as well about storytelling in Pixar, but it really resonates when you're doing a pitch if you have these strands running at the core of your pitch. Then I love this quote from Finding Nemo. So we're cheating death now. That's what we're doing, and we're having fun at the same time. That is what entrepreneurship is all about. How often do you use analogies about entrepreneurship where, the business is going to collapse, but that's what we're doing. We're cheating death, because there are so many businesses that when you hear the pitch, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. But they're cheating death, and they're having fun at the same time. So you've got to demonstrate this. You've got to demonstrate, and I gave an example yesterday about all the reasons why business might fail. Statistically, a business is much more likely to fail than it is to succeed. But what you've got to do is show that you are going to cheat death. What's going to make you cheat death? And most importantly, can you demonstrate to me and others, your employees, your mentors, your advisors, the whole network of people that you need, that not only are you going to cheat death, you're going to have fun at the same time. So you've got to respect structure, and you've got to think about the stories in the Pixar formula is there's an inciting incident. So in Finding Nemo, the inciting incident is when he loses all his children other than Nemo. So that's the inciting incident. And then the second inciting incident is when he loses Nemo to those scuba divers. Then you have to set off to resolve. Then you come to an abandonment thing in a Pixar movie. You abandon the mission you were on, but then something happens, the tension happens, the syndrome thing happens, the moral character thing happens, that you are forced to resolve it again. And this is also the story in the original Back to the Future. If there was an inciting incident, there was set off to resolve. This is about the father, and then he abandons it, and then he decides to beat up Buff. There's a resolve, and then there's resolution. Think about your pitch and the structure of the pitch in the same way. What is the inciting incident? What is it that made you decide to go on this journey to do this crazy thing called entrepreneurship? What was the inciting incident that made you choose, this is the thing that I want to spend multiple years of my life devoted to solving? What would cause you to abandon it? But where would that resolve come from? And again, Andrew, you asked the question about why is that important? Because that's where the resolve bit comes from. You know, that desire, you know, you're not going to just abandon, you're going to abandon, resolve, re-resolve, and then create a resolution. And I often say this about lots of entrepreneurs. This is, I think, Dean Hardcastle in Monsters University. And she says, the two of you did something together that no one has ever done before. You surprised me. At the heart of what investors really want, investors want to know that they backed something or somebody that did something that no one thought could be done. And you surprised me. One of the best businesses I've supported is and I think Dr. Reeves, you've met Fergus Dyer-Smith. I invested many years ago in a business called Wooshi, and I became chairman of the business. I'm still on the board of the business. We make videos. We make videos. When the business started, it was a kitchen table in Manchester, and I was the very first investor. And we cooked up the idea on a kitchen table. The idea that from that kitchen table in Manchester, we have now created the world's largest independent video making platform. And I'm still a shareholder in this business. Wow. And that's what investors are chasing. Give them a glimpse, give them a sense that you're going to do something that no one has ever done before, and you will positively surprise them. Because that's what they really want to do. They don't want to, we like to think that, you know, from an ego point of view, what you want to do is you want to say, I'm good at reading people and I back the right people. Give me that in the story that you two, that your team, you on your own, are the right people to back, and you're going to do something that no one has ever done before. And what you have to remember is, and I just love this in Ratatouille, and I just love this when Antonigo, the critic, says this, and it's a voiceover with the great late Peter O'Toole, who sadly has left us. The world is often unkind to new talent, new creation. The new needs friends. When you are pitching, and by the way, other people on this call, and I think Professor Reeves is one of them, they've seen me do pitch training. This is very different from any pitch training I've ever done before. And it was just, and I could be wrong, and I've only so I'd love your feedback, because I've only done this presentation once before. I just think now, having been through the Pixar thing, that actually we teach people the business side of a pitch, and it's very important. That's what we're going to do tomorrow. We are going to do that tomorrow. But actually, at the core of a pitch is something else. At the core of a pitch is an appeal to say to the investors, the world is often unkind to new talent, new creations. I am that new talent. I am that new creation. The new needs friends. Will you be the friend to the new, or will you just be the armchair critic? Because it's a lot easier to be a critic. It's a lot easier to be a critic. And what you're inviting me to do is move from being a critic to being the friend of the new. So tell a story. So do this at home. So let's not do this now, because I have tried this exercise and it didn't work at all, because it was just too much to do. But think of a message you want to communicate. So think of any message. If somebody does want to have a go, I know that yesterday we had somebody very bravely volunteer. But if you think of it, so if somebody does want to do this, awesome. Think of a message that you want to communicate using only what you've learned today. Turn it into a story, but then turn it into a 1-minute story, and then feel free to share. So that's an exercise that I'd love you to do at home, or if somebody is brave enough and they have something that they really want to communicate and they can do that in a 1-minute story, love to hear from you. So I'm not going to put anybody under pressure right now, but we do have some time. We do have about 15 minutes or so. So if anybody does want to do that before, then please put in the text message that, yeah, you're going to have a go, and we'd love to hear it. Love to hear that story. Are there any questions? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the share, if I may, and we're going to start talking. So stop share. There we go. And let's see everybody. Full screen. There we go. I can see everybody, and hopefully everybody can see me. Great. So what did you think? Sean Cummings, what did you think? What did you think of that presentation? Is it what you were expecting? Because we didn't see you yesterday, so this would have been all new for you. Was this what you were expecting?
No, it wasn't. But it was better than I expected.
Oh, good. Ooh, scary question. Great. Was there something new you've learned that you're going to apply?
I think that well, lots of things, but I think that the one thing that stuck out to me the very most was that a lot of investors are really not in it to make money, but they're there to become better versions of themselves. I thought that was a great insight that I'll carry with me.
And this is true for angel investors. It's not necessarily true for VC investors, because when you are managing other people's money, you do have to do the hang on. But most of you, once you get to the VC, it's not about the emotional story. It's about the numbers and the metrics and da da da. And that's a conversation we can have tomorrow. But angel investors are often about, I want to be a friend to the new. I really want to be a friend to the new. You want to do that. That's very, very appealing. So thank you, Sean, for that. Patsy Conway, are you from Conway?
No, I'm not. I'm from New Orleans.
Oh, I love New Orleans. New Orleans is such a cool, is it still cool? Is it still hip? Is it still happening?
It's still, Mardi Gras has been canceled, but it's still the best city ever.
I don't know. Clearly you haven't spent enough time in Fayetteville.
Okay, fair enough.
Excellent. So Patsy, what did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I think that there's a lot of like messages that you pointed out. I think that it was very, I really liked what you said about how storytelling is relevant because we need to connect, and finding those connections and using those stories to connect with people is really important.
Thank you, Patsy. Cannon, I know in your business, Cannon Reeves, I know in your business that you are selling products to children, you are selling products to schools to play with children and stuff. So I think it's really, really important that you really think through the stories, you think about the possibilities, you think about using the Pixar framework and how you help teachers tell stories, and how you help teachers get kids excited about what they're doing. So I think storytelling can play a very powerful bit in your business as well. So Ian, today it's the Razorback. Ian O'Rourke, today it's the Razorbacks. We did actually have, you missed it, we had a big banner for you at the very beginning saying welcome Ian at the very beginning. So if you tell a lie convincing enough, people will believe you. So there's Ian go, oh, thanks, I missed it. So Ian, what are the two things you took away from that you're going to do differently?
Well, it's funny because I did come late. I came from class, so I was trying to come up with the story that I was going to convey here today. So that's interesting that you called on me. But there's a few points that I was glad to catch in. I liked a lot of the connections you made with the Pixar sort of references. Coming to me, let's see, running in the corner of your pitch. I think a lot of it is the connection to yourself and the story that you say is really big. I'm thinking about, my research that I'm about to be working on, how do I relate that to my story? Because it really is relevant to my experiences. And so now seeing this and kind of that helps focus me when I go to present it. It helps me kind of bring that story to life and kind of relate to why I'm doing this and give more reason to. And I think you've hit some really cool things that I'm looking forward to kind of breaking down a little bit more and applying. So I can't say two right specifically because my notes are in the dark right now, but I'm really excited to break this down and look into it.
I hope that was a literal rather than metaphorical thing, that your notes are in the dark. So I hope that was literal. So thank you very, very much for that. Stacey.
Permjot, we do have a question in the chat. Ethicon, I hope that I'm saying that correctly. If not, forgive me, but they can't talk or show themselves because their setup is a mess, but they would like to ask the question, how can you get people out of their comfort zone when you're talking about your PhD thesis?
Really interesting question. Thank you. And I think it's an interesting question because I disagree with the question. How can you get people outside of their comfort zone when you're doing the talking? It's interesting. I can't coach someone who's not in the room. So when you are presenting something, it is your job to not actually take people outside of the comfort zone, but it's like one of the things we always say to people is, the idea is you gotta go outside of your comfort zone. I actually think great instructors and great storytellers stretch your comfort zone. And I think, and I know you might think I'm just playing with words, but I think it's very important that you actually stretch people rather than get people outside of their comfort zone. So think about the language you can use when you're presenting your PhD thesis. Think about the language you can use. Think about the audience. You know, we talked about this yesterday. Think about where the audience is starting from and where you want the audience to end. And think, how can I take my audience from here to there and stretch them, but never break them, never make them feel that they're outside of the comfort zone, because when people are outside of their comfort zone, it's not good. You know, you meet these people who say, oh, I like being outside of my comfort zone. No, you don't. You've just acquired a different sense of what your comfort zone is by virtue of saying I like being outside of my comfort zone. Says there's an oxymoron in that sentence. You can't say I like being outside of my comfort zone, because by definition then your comfort zone is new experiences, new adventures. It's still your comfort zone. So you got to meet people where they are and think about where you want to take them. Think, how do I construct this journey in a way that makes them comfortable? I hope that answers the question. So think about the language you can use, think about the imagery you can use, think about the how you can resonate with the audience to make them go on that journey with you. Okay, I hope that answers the question. I don't like answering a question by saying, oh, I disagree with the question, but I think it's very important that you do think through. It's not your audience's job to get outside the comfort zone. It's your job to take them on a journey, to tell them that story. Okay, Brooke Lawson. So I like you. I can always see you typing, Brooke. I can always see you typing. You look like a DJ.
I know, it's very distracting. My camera's kind of in an odd place, but we have to work with it.
We have to work with what we have, Brooke. So Brooke, what are the two things you're going to do differently as a result?
So Ian actually just sent it in the chat, and it's the storytelling process. For me, I have been interviewing like crazy lately just for internships and potential jobs and things like that. And so I think that that will help me sell myself to a company, is if I'm more prepared and answer questions more of a story, so it's more engaging.
Brooke, I'm going to challenge you on that. I would say do the complete opposite.
You
and
think?
You might say, hang on, and you're going to say, hang on, you've just taught me to do all these things. Let me tell you about there's storytelling. And there's when you are going for a job. So I'm a recruiter. I'm a recruiter, and we're at this networking event. How many people do you think are going to come up to me with really well prepared? Hi, I'm Brooke. I'm with the University of Arkansas. I'm I've done this PhD, and I've done some research on your organization. I think there's a really good fit between your organization. Yeah, most people are going to give me a version of that pitch, aren't they, Brooke? Right. And you might tell me, you might do that in a really powerful story style. Okay, and the story style might be, let me tell you about the things and why my background is so relevant. But it's still, you don't know. This about knowing your audience. This is from yesterday. You don't know what my journey is. You don't know where I am from. So, Brooke, what you might want to do instead is just think through the story I want. Maybe, Brooke, I want to tell you my story. And maybe you give me an opportunity to tell my story. So what I often love it is when I'm at a recruitment fair, sometimes you hear people going up to, hey, Brooke, I see you work for Procter & Gamble in recruitment. You must get a lot of people asking to join. In terms of your experience, which people are the most successful up there? What things do you look for? What do you hope to have? So you're asking them questions and they're telling you, and then you say, I am so glad you said that, because those describe word to word what my supervisors and my friends would say about me. Now, if I wanted to send you my resume, how would I send that to you? Because I think you've given me confidence to know that there's a good match between my skill set and what you're looking for. So suddenly you are engaging with them rather than, because when you go to see a Pixar movie, you are saying, hey, entertain me. I'm going to pay some money and I'm going to sit down and I want you to tell me a story. What you don't do is if I suddenly met you on the street, Brooke, and say, Brooke, hi, I know you don't know me, but can I tell you a story? Oh my gosh, is that the time? Yeah. So don't take the storytelling to a level where you don't get permission. Make sure you are in a scenario, in an arena where people are very comfortable and there's an expectation of storytelling. In those instances, what I love to do is actually say, can you tell me a story about what you're looking for. Tell me about the Procter & Gamble journey, about how people, very powerful way to recruit.
Perfect. Thank
Brooke,
you.
I hope that's helpful.
Permjot, we have another text from Isaac. You talked to him yesterday at the end.
Isaac Wilburn.
Yeah. He said, can you explain again, so recap why tension matters in storytelling and how to resolve it?
Okay. So tension matters because let's say we're solving a problem and it's got to be appropriate tension. So Carol and I have actually worked together in South Africa, and all South African pitches start the same way. Every single South African pitch is the same way. Every South African pitch starts like this. South Africa has many problems. Crime, endemic racism, poverty, and inequality. But we have a solution. We have developed a pen that does not need to be refilled. The expectation, the tension, the build-up was here, and then when the tension was resolved, we're down here. But for some bizarre reason, every South African pitch starts the same way. And so, but you have to create tension to get me excited. I want to know, Isaac, before you tell me your solution, I've got to want the solution. What's the solution to this problem? What's the solution? So Cannon, I'm just picking on Cannon because I know his business a little bit. So many children are being failed in STEM, in education, because they're not being allowed to have the imagination of these kids fired up. And what do we know about the way kids love to be immersed? They love to play. If we can give them robots to play with, if we can show them that these things are playful, we can increase the participation of all kinds of kids into STEM subjects because they want to get back to building toys. Let's do that. That's what we do. But what I've done is I've created the tension. I've created a bit of a story. I mean, this is without knowing too much about it, but I've created a story around kids playing. There's some tension there. The tension is building up, and then I've resolved it by saying, so what we're doing is da 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 da. But I've created tension. I've resolved it. If I just went, my name is Cannon Reeves, and we create robots for children to play with at school. They're really cool because you can do programming. And it's really neat, and they're very affordable, and teachers love using them, and it's really good. Great, I've given you the same story, but there's no tension. There's absolutely no tension in the story. Do you see what I mean? So Isaac, I hope that answers the question. That's why you need tension, and then you need to resolve the tension. You can't just say, there's a big problem with the way people are learning art in schools. Wish we could do something about it. That's it. Yeah, that means what? Where's the tension? Thank you, Isaac. Brandon, my fellow Brit, raising his hand again. Awesome. Credit to your nation, sir. What's your question?
So first off, I'd like to start off with saying thank you, I guess, for kind of solving a solution while kind of just discussing it today. Just kind of going over like the emotional aspect. I think it was just more so the first aspect of the, presentation, talking about storytelling and how it's an interaction or interactive art. But so I have a personal story with my pitch that I need to tie in, and I was wondering whether it would be better to start off with that and then create tension with discussing the problem, like how it applies to everyone else, and then go into details, or like.
So what we're going to do, Brandon, you're going to be here tomorrow?
Yeah.
We're going to lead with that, because tomorrow is, just so everybody knows, tomorrow's completely interactive. There's no presentation. It's completely interactive. It's very different. It's what people who've worked with me before are used to. My style is you will present, and we will just start off. The presentation tomorrow will begin with, okay, Brandon, give me your presentation. And then I will then give you feedback, and then I'll make general points, and then we'll build up, and then I'll give you some just-in-time learnings. So it'll still be structured, there'll still be some learnings, but the learnings will be in real time, because I actually think pitching is a skill rather than a theory. And I think the best way to perfect any skill is to practice rather than, oh, here are the 7 points behind a good presentation. It's pitching is a skill, not a theory thing. So that's what we're going to do, Brandon, tomorrow. We're going to lead with you. So make sure you're on time. You were the first one today, so you will be there. So,
sounds good.
So don't forget the survey. The surveys are very important. Surveys are very important because if we don't get a survey, we assume it was so bad, you didn't even have the energy. You couldn't even be bothered to tell me how bad it was. You're just like the bad restaurant. I'm not going to do a bad review. I'm just not going to go to the restaurant ever again.
Well, don't forget the survey and don't forget to sign up for tomorrow.
Exactly. So thank you very much, Meredith. How was that for you? Any key takeaways for you?
Yes, it was wonderful. I tell stories every day to my toddler. It's a recurring series about monster trucks that get flat tires. But actually, one of the reasons I was so interested to come to the storytelling session was that I do corporate relations for the university. And I think my job is very much about storytelling, telling the story of our region and how the university partners. And so it's a critical aspect of jobs. And I was really interested in your response to Brooke about recruiters, because I used to work in Career Center. And I was thinking that your answer was brilliant. But I think it's in the job interview when, you know, you're kind of at this next stage and you're kind of, you're one of the finalists, that's when you really get to tell your story. And sometimes that's the first story. And I do think that's where you really, I mean, that's the first question rather, but I think that's where you can really, really hook them when you're you know, getting to that point. And if you tell a really good story about yourself, then you can get hired.
And Meredith, I'm really glad you said it, because if you tell a great story, you'll also be remembered. You'll also be remembered. That people, stories are easy to remember. So, so you're absolutely right. So, Brooke, the advice I was giving was when you are at the networking thing and everybody, when there's lots of noise, and the way to cut through the noise is by you having a conversation rather than pitching to them. But when you are in the interview, it would be very odd in an interview if you were asking the questions, because they're like, Brooke, I'm not sure if you know how interviews work, but I ask the questions. So it'd be very odd if you did that in an interview. Meredith, thank you very, very much. And I think if you, because one of the first questions you know you're going to be asked is, Brooke, so could you give us some information about your background? Don't just say, well, I went to this university, then I studied this, and I really had a great teacher. Tell a great story. It could start off with, when I was 14, I was lucky enough to be taught by somebody who had a real passion for this. And that passion has stayed with me. We've all had great teachers. And what I knew there and then was I wanted to do this. So everything I've done since then has been in the pursuit of that passion. And getting a job with your company would be the, you know, something like that, something like that. Gray Church, we'll have the last comment from Gray, unless there are other comments. Gray, any two things that you're going to take away?
Attention was, because remember, I'm going to apply what you're teaching us to when I present my dissertation. So the tension was good. I was thinking about that. And also I was thinking that I do tell stories a lot when I teach. So I liked that aspect.
Brilliant. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Jake, with all the knowledge behind you, Jake, is everything good? Any contributions, any comments you'd like to make?
No, everything was great. I loved it. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship, and your presentation got me thinking about how, you know, business professors, we teach from cases very often, which are stories.
Yes.
In the classroom, we're telling stories constantly. Yet when we go to conferences and we present our research, we do everything the opposite. Like we do all your boring examples. I was like, oh yes, that's conference presentations.
Yes, it's very odd that we are naturally we are storytellers. We are natural. Kids learn at a very early age to tell stories, don't they? I mean, I always knew my kid, bless him, I always knew he was lying when he was telling a story, because he would go, I have an idea, and his eyes would go rapidly left to right. I have an idea. But we are naturally gifted as storytellers. We are born with that gift because it's how we have made progress as a species. And yet we lose that. And I love the way, Jake, you said that I tell stories every day, but then when I go to these conferences, I mustn't tell a story. And then 17% of what was interesting, we asked 1,000 companies, and 17% of them said what gives them a competitive advantage is investing in technology. We were expecting the technology thing to be slightly higher than that. And I think that reflects the productivity gains we are failing to see across the Midwest.
Yeah. You've been to my presentations, I can tell.
Why would we do that? Why would you do that? But that's what we do. And we don't need to, because you could tell a great story about that, you know? So all this energy and effort is going into this thing. And we found out that only 17% of companies said it made any difference to them. What really made a difference to those companies was investments in this area and this area. And look, let me give you an example of a great company that is doing all the things we thought they should be doing. Here's a company, they make something as boring as paper clips, but they decide, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you very, very much indeed. I think that's our time. So I am going to bid you all farewell, and I hope I'll see all of you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Permjot.
My pleasure. My pleasure.